Learners. Welcome to teaching learning session of sociology. Today we'll discuss about concepts and forms of social mobility. We discussed a little bit about the social mobility in our previous lecture. What is social mobility? Right? Social mobility means transition from one social position to another social position. When a group moves from one social position to another social position, that is known as the social mobility, right? We discussed about the concept of Sanskritizations, right? This is a concept of social mobility. That is when a group moves in a hierarchy from lower to the higher position. That is known as social mobility. And so change in this social position involved generally significant change in the life chances and the lifestyles, right? This social mobility, there is a significant changes in life chances and lifestyles, right? The concept of social mobility is classically defined by P.A. Sorokin. So this social mobility concept was given by P.A. Sorokin, right? According to Sorokin, the shift of position may be undertaken by an individual or social object or values. That is to say, anything that has been created or modified by human activity can experience a social mobility. Anyone can experience a social mobility, whether it's a group, whether it's an individual, whether it's a social object, whether it's a value, right? Anything which was created or modified by the human activities can experience social mobility as per Sorokin. Implicit in working the concept of social mobility is recognition of gradation in society. The gradation is normally done in terms of power, prestige, and privileges, right? So, social mobility, right? As we discussed that there is a hierarchy in the society, and this has been done to maintain a social order. And with hierarchy, there is some power, prestige, and privileges are associated. When people or an individual or some value or object moves from one position to another position, right? The power, prestige, and privileges also changes, right? There is a gradation of power, privileges, and prestiges, right? So social mobility is recognition of gradation in a society, and this gradation is actually recognized by the power, privileges, and the prestige, right? There are types and forms of social mobility. So what is social mobility? That is movement from one place to another place, that is known as the social mobility, right? Types and forms of social mobility. Horizontal social mobility. What is horizontal? First is horizontal social mobility. Horizontal social mobility means movement by an individual or group from one position to another in a society, which does not involve a shift into higher or lower stratum. That is horizontal mobility. As per Sorokin, horizontal social mobility means a transition of an individual or social object from one social group to another situated on the same level. That is the horizontal. What is horizontal? This is horizontal. Horizontal, so what is horizontal mobility? Horizontal social mobility means when a group or an individual moves from one position to another in a society, which does not involve a shift from higher or lower stratum. That is, when an individual is moving from, say, one group to another group, right, situated on the same level, then that is known as the horizontal mobility. There is no movement upwards or downwards. Movement at the same level is known as horizontal mobility. Horizontal mobility does not involve a major movement up or down and the hierarchy. The horizontal dimensions of social mobility cannot throw much light on nature of stratification present in society. So, although there is a movement from one group to another group and in this at the same level, but it does not throw the nature of stratification present in any society. Anthony Giddens considered that there is a great deal of mobility along the lateral direction in modern society. He prefers to define horizontal mobility as a lateral mobility. So, Giddens defined it as a lateral mobility. Sorokin defined it as a horizontal mobility. Vertical mobility. Now, next type of mobility is vertical mobility. What is vertical mobility? Vertical mobility simply put an upward or downward change in the rank of an individual or group. What is vertical mobility? That is, it is upward or downward change in the rank of an individual or group is known as the vertical mobility. That is when there is change in the hierarchy, even when an individual or group moves upward in upward direction of the hierarchy or downward direction of the hierarchy, then that is known as the vertical mobility. Essential vertical mobility involves movement which ensures enhancing or lowering of ranks, right? When group or an individual moves upward in the hierarchy, that enhances the rank, and when they move lower in the hierarchy, that it shows a lowering the rank. Sorokin defined vertical mobility as relations involved in transition of an individual from one social stratum to another social stratum. According to direction of transition, there are two type of vertical social mobility: ascending and descending, social climbing or sinking respectively. So what is horizontal? There are we discussed the two type of mobility: horizontal mobility and vertical mobility. Horizontal mobility, that is movement at the same position, right, and at the same stratum, actually at the same stratum, that is the horizontal mobility. Vertical mobility is movement either in upward direction or downward direction, that is known as vertical mobility. Vertical mobility is further divided into two: ascending mobility and descending mobility. Ascending mobility is social climbing, that is when an individual or group or an object move in upward direction of the hierarchy, then that is known as social climbing. And social sinking, descending mobility is social sinking when an individual or group or an object or value moves lower in the rank, right? Then that is known as social descending, right? Anthony Giddens refers to vertical mobility as movement up or down in socio-economic scales. According to them, those who gain in property, income, or status are said to be upward mobile, while those who move in opposite directions are downwardly mobile. So, Anthony Giddens, according to Anthony Giddens, horizontal mobility is lateral mobility, while vertical mobility is that is movement up or down on the basis of socio-economic scale, right? So according to him, those who gain in property, income, or status is said to be the upward mobile, while those who loses it, right, they move in the opposite or in the downward direction, they are known as downward mobile. Giddens comment that the modern society, vertical and horizontal, that is lateral mobility, are often combined. Often one form of mobility leads to other. For instance, an individual working in a company in one city might be promoted to a higher position in a branch of a firm located in other town or even in the different country. So according to Giddens, both vertical and horizontal movement, they are combined, right? That one mobility leads to the another mobility, right. So there are two types of mobility: upward and downward. That is, sorry, horizontal and vertical mobility. Vertical mobility is further of two types: upward mobility or the downward mobility. Now the forms of mobility, right? Forms of mobility: and infiltration of an individual of lower stratum into an existing higher one, and a creation of a new group by such individual, and insertion of such group into higher stratus instead of side by side with existing group of this stratum. Correspondingly, descending or downward mobility has two principal forms. So, see, downward mobility, that is, there are the two principal forms. What are the forms of mobility? That is, first is and filtration of an individual of a lower stratum into existing higher ones, right? and creation of a new group by an individual and insertion of such group into higher stratum instead of side by side with the existing group of the stratum, right? Dropping of individual from higher social position into existing lower one without degradation or disintegration of higher group to which they belonged, and degradation of social group as a whole in the abasement of rank among other on its own disintegration as a social unit, right? In a more recent treatment on form of mode of mobility in advanced mobility is advanced by R.H. Turner, contrasting the predominant mode of mobility of England and United States of America. Turner has suggested two ideal typical normative pattern of upward mobility. So Turner has suggested two ideal typical normative pattern of mobility, that is the contest mobility is a system in which elite status is the prize in an open contest and is taken by the aspiration on efforts, right? This is contest mobility. Contest, as the name indicate, contest, there is a contest, and this elite status is a prize, and it is an open contest. In an open contest, elite is a prize and anyone can take it by efforts. Any aspirant can take that by efforts. The term elite is used by Turner in a simplified sense to mean higher class category. While the contest is governed by some rules of fair play, the contestants have a wide choices in strategies they may employ. Since prize of successful upward mobility is not in the hands of established elites to give out, the latter cannot determine who shall attain it and who shall not, right? So Turner has described that there are two types of mobility in England and the upward mobility in England and United States. First is the contest mobility, and he defined the contest mobility as in contest mobility any aspirant can fight for an elite status, and elite status is a prize. He considered the elite status as a prize for that contest, and any aspirant can get it by efforts. Any aspirant who can employ any of these strategies to employ that status or to employ to win that prize, right? That type of mobility is known as the contest mobility. Like for example, jobs, right? Consider the job as a prize, right? And there are many aspirants, right? They can employ the strategies to get that promotions or the job promotions in the jobs or the jobs, right? So contest mobility, any aspirant can contest for that particular position or for that prize, and they can employ any sort of strategies to win that contest, right? And the elite status is the prize of that contest, right? And elite status is what? Elite status is nothing but the high class category, right? Right? And there are certain, according to Turner, there are certain rules of the contest, and there is a fair play of the contest, and the prize doesn't lays in the hand of the established elite, right? Not in the prize is not the upward mobility, and the successful upward mobility is not in the hands of established elite to give out, so anyone can attain it, right? Next is first is your contest mobility. Turner has given the term of contestability, explained contestability. Second type of mobility according to Turner is sponsored mobility. Sponsored mobility is one where the established elite or their agent recruit individual into their fold. In this case, the elite status is given on the basis of some criteria of supposed merit and cannot be taken by any amount of efforts or strategies. Right? That is in contest mobility, anyone can contest, any aspirant can contest and win that prize. But in upward mobility, or in sponsored upward mobility, according to Turner, in this mobility, the established elite or their individual recruit individuals into their fold, so that the prize lays in the hand of already established elites. So they recruit individual into their fold, right? In this case, the elite status is given on the basis of some criteria of supposed merit and cannot be taken by any amount of the strategy. Upward mobility is like entry into a private club, where each candidate must be sponsored by one or more members. Ultimately, the members grant or deny the upward mobility on the basis of whether they judge the candidate to have the qualities they to see in the fellow members, they want to see in the fellow members, right? So if you want a membership, suppose membership of any of the club, and the rule is that in this mobility, the rule is that the candidate must be sponsored by one or more than one already by one or more than one members, right? So the members, those who are already members of that club, grant or deny the upward mobility of an individual, right? On the basis of whether they judge the candidate to have the qualities which they want to see in their fair fellow members, right? So Turner described two type of mobility, that is, one is your sponsored mobility and another is your contest mobility, right? Dimensions and implications of mobility. There are various dimensions and implications. Integrational mobility and intragenerational mobility. Intergenerational mobility and intragenerational mobility. There are two ways of studying the social mobility. Either one can study individuals' own career, how far they move up and down in the social scale in course of their working lives. This is called the intergenerational mobility. And alternatively, one can analyze how far children enter the same type of occupation as their parents or grandparents. Mobility across the generation is called the intergenerational mobility. Right? So intragenerational mobility and intergenerational mobility. Intergenerational mobility is when you see how far one has gone, what one has achieved in his one's own career, how far they have moved up or down in the social scale, then that is known as the intergenerational mobility. Or intragenerational mobility is when one analyze how far the children enter the same type of occupation as their parents or grandparents, and mobility across the generation is known as the intragenerational mobility. Suppose grandparents of a child, the occupation of the grandparents of child was X, right? And the occupation of parents of a child was Y, and now the he has that child has opted, say, Z type of occupation, right? That is totally different from X and Y occupation, that is occupation from grandparents and parents. That is known as the intragenerational mobility, that how far the children have moved away, or what type of uh, uh, what type of occupation the children have entered, right? Whether they have entered to the, or whether they have opted the same type of an occupation, or they have opted for the different type of occupation, right? So mobility across the generation is known as the intragenerational. Why mobility within its own generation, and how far one has gone in its life career or in its career, that is known as the intergenerational mobility. So, study from the standpoint of change over a lifespan of an individual is a case of intergenerational mobility study. If study is undertaken from the standpoint of change within the family over two or more generation, then that is known as the intragenerational mobility study. So that is the study how far one has gone or what one has achieved in his or her own life, that is known as intergenerational study. Or when you study from the point of view how far that particular family or a group has gone right, over two or more generation, then that is known as the intragenerational mobility study, right? A range of mobility. When people move up or down a social scale, they may travel through one or many strata. There are stratas, right? We discussed about this stratas. So when people move up or down in the social scale, they may travel many stratas, one or many stratas. The social distance thus covered is denoted by the term range. It could be movement covering a short distance, social distance, that is a short range shift. Also, a big slide across a number of strata, up or down is also possible, right? So downward mobility and upward mobility. See, what is the range of mobility? When any of the this group moves from when any group move upward or the downward, they may travel through one or more strata, and this social distance covered through strata, that is the number of strata they have moved, that is known as the range, right? Range of mobility. So downward mobility, this trend is most often linked up with psychological problem and anxiety, where individuals fail to sustain the lifestyle to which they have become accustomed. A redundancy can also be cause of downward mobility. Middle-aged men who loses their job find it hard to gain a new employment at all, or can only obtain work at a lower level or income than before. This is known as the downward mobility. Downward mobility is when you move downwards, when you move down in this strata or in the hierarchy, then it is known as the downward mobility. Right? It could be because of some psychological issues, it could be because of anxiety, or it could be because of any of the issues. In this, the individual fails to sustain the lifestyle in which they have become accustomed. As I have given an example, suppose if some middle-aged person loses his or person loses his job and find it difficult to and it was difficult for him and was not able to find out a new job, right? Right, new employment, then or if it's either it is difficult for him to get a new job, or even if he got a new job, that can he can obtain work at a lower level of income than before, then this is known as the downward mobility, right? It is so as many women abandon their promising career on the birth of a child. After spending some years bringing up a family, such women return to paid force at a later date, often at a lower level than at which they left. This is known as the downward mobility. So, right, when suppose you are getting X amount, and because of these certain reasons, you have to leave your job, or because of certain issues, now you are forced to take up a job at much lower level, or well, you are forced to take a job of a lower level job or a lower type level of a job, or for which the payment is lesser than the previous one. This type of a mobility is known as the downward mobility. What is upward mobility? Acquiring wealth and property is a major means of moving up in the modern society, but other channels are also there, that is entering a occupation with honor, that is known as the upward mobility. When one moves upward in the hierarchy, that is known as the upward mobility. Acquiring wealth and property is a major means of moving up in the modern societies. Possibilities of mobility. What are the possibilities of mobility? Mobility is not possible if a society is rigid enough to allow any movement with its graded structure. On the other hand, mobility is facilitated if society exhibit a flexible character. So, if society is rigid, then mobility is rigid. If society is rigid, right, mobility is not possible, right? Or if society is flexible, then mobility is facilitated. Very little vertical mobility is possible in a closed society. An open society allows for a greater vertical social mobility. If society is closed type of a society, a rigid type of a society, either mobility is not allowed, or in a closed society, there is a very little vertical mobility, right? While in open society, it allows a greater vertical mobility. Every society has established criteria, which might be proper manners, family lineage, education, or racial affiliations, must be satisfied before people can move to a higher social level. There are certain rules, there are certain criteria established by the society for upward or the downward movements. If anyone comes into those criterias or fulfills those criterias, they can move upward or downward. Criterias could be family lineage, could be the criteria, property could be the criteria, education could be the criteria, racial affiliation could be the criteria, like anything else could be the criteria. That is, that every society establishes those criteria, right? So we discussed about what is social mobility. P.S. Sorokin has defined the social mobility. What is social mobility? That is the movement from one's position either in the upward direction or downward direction is known as the social mobility. Social mobility, according to Sorokin, is of two types: horizontal social mobility and the vertical social mobility. Horizontal social mobility is when an individual moves within the same strata, that is known as the horizontal social mobility. And vertical mobility is that is movement either in upward direction or downward direction from the strata or the hierarchy is known as um, vertical social mobility. Vertical social mobility is again upward or the downward direction. According to Giddens, is lateral mobility, right? And vertical mobility, according to Giddens, there are vertical upward and the downward mobility, and both mobility works in combination as per Giddens, right? So there are certain fact we discussed about various factors, right, of the mobility or the possibilities of the mobility. If society is a closed type of mobility, then vertical mobility is very hard, and if society is open type of a mobility, then vertical mobility is quite easy and flexible. Now, factors and forces of social mobility. What are the factors and forces of social mobility? One of the pioneers of the study of social mobility is Russian sociologist P.S. Sorokin. He defined the social mobility. According to him, there are certain primary factors that affects mobility in all societies, and secondary factor that are specific to a particular society at particular times, right? So according to Sorokin, there are factors which are responsible for the social mobility, and he defined the factor he divided the factors into two: primary factors and secondary factors. And primary factors affect the mobility in all societies, in all type of societies. These primary factors affect the mobility, while the secondary factor that are specific to a particular society, open type of a society or a closed type of a society, or other secondary factors totally depends on the varies from society to society, while the primary factors of mobility affect all the societies. No society can be regarded as complete closed society denying any mobility, nor it can be completely open, as there are always barriers to mobility. So we discussed about the closed and the open societies. So as per Sorokin, no society can be regarded as a closed society, totally closed society, as no society can deny any mobility, and neither and nor any society could be a totally open type of a society, as there are always barrier in mobility. Sorokin listed out four primary factors like demographic factors, primary factors which impacts the vertical mobility, right? In any of the society, that is the demographic factors, abilities of parents and children, the faulty distribution of an individual in social position, and the change of the environment. Demographic factors are what, one factor that affect in all societies. Demographic factor, it observed that the birth rate of higher group is lower than the lower groups, and the other important reason is rapid industrialization. So demographic factors like industrialization, age, like your birth rate, right? Birth rate of higher group is lower than that of the lower groups. So demographic factors, birth rate, age, industrialization, gender, and many other things, income. Demographic factors definitely has bearing on social mobility, but as itself not purely biological phenomenon. Social factors have bearing on demography. Mendel, Mandelbaum and others have, for example, written how cultural factors such as preferences have affected population structure. Right. First factor is demographic factor. Demographic factor includes your income, your gender. It could be your status. It could be your birth rate. It could be your other things like age. Right. All these comes under the demographic factors, and this impacts the mobility. Right. Next factor is talent and ability. Right. Popular pressure may force individual to vacate position they are unsuited for. Even in societies with inherited status position, there were always opportunities for talented individual to be upwardly mobile. So, talent and ability. If an individual has a talent and capable to perform certain tasks, even if in the closer societies, right? There are the opportunities for talented individual to for the upward movements, right? Social stratification points out even in the rigid hierarchical feudal system, there was an opportunity for a person of a low birth, even from among the bonded, to raised into a favor of minstrels. Mobility of this kind, Turnell has called the sponsored mobility, contrasted to the contest mobility, although these terms were not coined with respect to pre-industrial form of mobility. Elite theories. Now, what are the elite theory? What is elite theory? Talent and ability are main reason why individual come to occupy a certain position. Was the chief argument of V. Pareto, one of the elite theorists. Elite theory was given by the Pareto, V. Pareto, right? And V. Pareto is that talent. Actually, the talent plays or the ability is one of the main reason why individual occupy a certain position. This was the chief argument for the elite theory, right? He contended that over time generation loses their innate qualities, or a person from strata might exhibit those qualities, and thus changing the personal of elite would take place. History is the graveyard of aristocrats, according to Pareto, and this was his famous theory of circulation of elites. Right. So Pareto said that talent and ability plays an important role in upward in movement of the vertical mobility. That is in talent and ability plays an important role in vertical movement, right. So because of the talent or because of the ability, an individual come and occupy a certain position, right. And according to him, that over a period of generation, over a period, that generation loses innate qualities, and when it is the time when a person from a lower strata might exhibit those qualities and can change the person of elite. Then now a time comes when the generation loses their innate qualities, and this gives an opportunity to the lower class who are capable enough and have a talent to occupy their position, and this provides a opportunity for upward movement, right, or a vertical movement, right? That is an upward movement. This circulation in Pareto's theory was of two types. The first, talented individual from lower strata and of lower strata enters the higher strata, and other times when the abilities of higher strata groups are called into question, it is likely that a group from the lower strata challenge and overthrow the supremacy of such group. That is what the elite theory, right? What he said is, according to Pareto, that over a period of time that generation loses their innate qualities, right? And this gives an opportunity to the lower strata, to the individual, or to the talented and capable individuals of the lower strata to occupy that elite position and replace the members of the elite position, right? Both individual and group mobility is possible, right? Max Gluckman has referred to this as a repetitive change in context of change in African chiefdoms. It may also happen that such change does not take place within confines of a given system, but ends in changing system itself, that is structure of position itself, right? M. Duggar has referred to this as a difference between conflict within the resign and conflict over the resign, right? So upward movement is possible, and it has been explained by the Pareto in elite theories, right? Elite theories. Next is change in social environment. There are changes in the social environment. A major factor for mobility is thus the social change. Another factor which plays an important role in social mobility is change in the social environment. The major factor for mobility is social change. Change in various kinds like economic, social, political, legal, technical, and others have an effect on the social mobility. These macro processes can change, which affect not only the mobility but the other aspect of society as well. One of the important economic changes can have unidentified by the sociologists as in having an impact on social mobility is industrialization. So because of industrialization have given an opportunity for upward movement, for vertical movement. Industrialization and mobility. Lipset and Bendix list five main points or the factors of social mobility in industrial society. First is change in number of available vacancies, different rates of fertility, change in rank accorded to occupation, change in number of inheritable status position, and change in legal restriction pertaining to potential opportunities, right? So available vacancies within the industrialization, there is a shift in occupational structure from agriculture to industry and later to the services. That society has changed from agricultural society to industrial society to the service society. With the shift to the industry, there is a sudden spurt of economic activities, an increase in the number of positions available in the society, and the migration of people to city from a rural area in order to work at new factory job is one form of a mobility, right? This is both geographical aspect as well as the vertical aspect, as usually city jobs are ranked higher in prestigial hierarchy than the rural ones. New white collar positions have also come into existence. All of these result in expansion of number of available vacancies. In this way, their industrialization act as a major factor generating social mobility. right? So vacancies, that is available vacancies, our society changed from agriculture society to the industrial society to the service society, and this has given an opportunities to many to move from one place to another, from rural background to the urban background. This is horizontal as well as the vertical type of mobility. And this industrialization, so this industrialization played an important role in social mobility. Then legal restrictions, right? Legal restrictions, what are the legal restrictions? Change in the political and legal framework can also be an important source of social mobility. The traditional caste order in India assigned individual to the traditional occupation, and the certain occupations such as the learned occupations were legally or customarily forbidden to the people of a lower birth, right? While the through democratic or by the democratization of the political system, with the concept of all citizens have equal rights under the law, removed the barriers of social mobility. At the same time, introduction of measures such as universal franchisee, panchayati raj, enabled the person to inherit denied political rights to enter to the political arenas. So, industrialization played an important role, right? Then the legal restrictions played an important role. Legal restrictions like if in Indian caste system, that some because of the certain customs or because of other reasons, that people of the lower rank were forbidden to take up certain type of jobs. But but with the but through but now there is a legal framework, right? Or through democratization, right? They have this democracy has provided each and every individual the equal rights and equal opportunities. Through this, through laws or through constitution, everyone has got the right that they, if anyone can opt the job which they want to be, or if they are capable enough to for that job, despite of their rank in the hierarchy, despite of their caste in the hierarchy, right? They can opt that job, right? And through the introductions of the measures such as the panchayati raj and other system, they have enabled they have given the political rights to the deprived ones, right? Now, rank and position. Rank and position is plays an important role in mobility. Mobility can also occur without any change in individual's position if the ranking of position changes. For example, in USA, one study shows that government positions have enhanced their prestige in 50s compared to 20s. So this could be, of course, lead to downward mobility as well. Due to re-ranking, some occupation would come to be less important, right, in this society and economy then formally, and thus those occupying those positions would be demoted. So rank and position, right, that is mobility can also occur without any change in individual's position. There is no change. Someone is working at the same position, but if the ranking of the by changing the ranking of the position, right, one can move upward or downward, right? The convergence hypothesis. What is convergence hypothesis? A well-known and much debated hypothesis regarding the relationship of industrialization and stratification is convergence hypothesis. This was almost this was most clearly articulated by Kerr and others who stated that in today's world, the fact of industrialization was a common denominator. The fact of industrialization was a common denominator which would impel all industrialized society towards a common future society, which they called a pluralistic industrial society. This society would have common pattern of stratification as well as common pattern of mobility. Mobility would be high as the demand of industrialization would necessitate the free and easy mobility of a person from one position to another position. There was a functionalist argument in one sense. They also implied that there would be continuous increase in mobility rates over time. So, convergence hypothesis, it is one of the most debated hypotheses regarding to the relationship of industrialization and stratification. What is the convergence hypothesis? Convergence hypothesis states that this industrialized society that industrialization was a common denominator which would impel all the industrialized society towards a common future society which they call a pluralistic industrial society. According to this, all the society will be pluralistic societies, and these society would have a common pattern of stratification as well as common pattern of the mobility, right? Because of industrialization there will be all societies will be pluralistic type of a society, and there will be a common pattern of stratification as well as the common pattern of mobility, right? Because of the high demand of industrialization, it will necessitize the free and easy mobility of a person from one position to another position, right? And the functional argument in one sense is that they also implied that there would be continuous increase in mobility over time. Downward mobility, downward mobility can occur because certain occupations have lost in prestige through re-ranking of position, and thus their occupants have moved downwards. Upward mobility, that is, can occur because of the certain occupation have gained in prestige, and downward mobility is because certain occupation have lost in prestige through re-ranking of a position, right? And their occupants have moved down. The Marxist view. What is the Marxist view about this? The Marxist view of stratification and mobility is based on the class nature of a society. We discussed about the Marxist view that according to Marx, that class is only that stratification, that the stratification and mobility of any society is based on the classes, right? Marx stated that the capitalism developed, there would be a tendency towards the polarization. By this, he meant that the stratification system would come to resemble a pyramid with the masses of people bunched at the bottom, right? So, according to Marx, right, because of this capitalism in society, there will be this that in society this stratification of society would resemble a pyramid. Pyramid means higher area at lower side and lower area at the higher side, right? And it would be like a pyramid, and pyramid there will be the masses of people bunched at the bottom, right? At the bottom level there will be the masses, and at top level there will be the elites or the classes. Even the intermediate groups, such as the petty bourgeois, small landowners, and others, of course, would in course of time find themselves demoted. Thus, if at all mobility was a feature of capitalism, it was downward rather than upward. The result of this polarization and pauperization would be the overthrow of capitalist system and creation of socialism. So Marxist view was what? Marxist, according to the Marxist, that because of the capitalism, right, this there is a tendency towards the polarization, that there will be the polarization, and this stratification system would resemble a pyramid, and there will be masses at the bottom of the pyramid. Even the intermediate group, even if there are the intermediate groups like the small landowners or the bourgeois, they would of course come down, they would be demoted. According to the Marx, there would be downward mobility over a period of time rather than the upward mobility. There will be downward mobility, and this polarization would be the overthrow of capitalist system, right? The result of this polarization and pauperization would be the overthrow of capitalistic system and creation of a new socialist or socialism system. Marxist perspectives, the factor causing mobility are those that are basic to system of capitalism, and furthermore the opportunities for upward movement are negligible and bulk of mobility is downward mobility, right? Now the subjective factors that motivate people to be mobile. Every individual's estimation for himself or herself is largely based on others' evaluation of them. An individual always seeks to be well thought of in the eyes of the fellow men. Thus, they will aspire to those positions which society deems to be worthwhile. The process of Sanskritization shows how it is in effect a commitment to the value of a caste system that is a source of aspiration for mobility. Right? So subjective factors like everyone wants to see, every individual has certain aspirations and they want to achieve their target, and everyone wants to um, everyone wants that everyone else should think good about them, right? So an individual aspire to achieve those position or those things which society deems to be a worthwhile. So this motivates an individual, and this has been described by Srinivas in the process of Sanskritization. What is Sanskritization? In Sanskritization, by imitating the values and the beliefs and the rituals and other things of by a caste of a lower class, imitating the higher caste values by a lower caste value, by lower caste, they try to move upward in the hierarchy. This is known as the Sanskritization, right? Culture and social reproduction. So, before we proceed further, we discussed about social mobility. What is social mobility, right? There are two types of mobility. We discussed about the horizontal mobility, we discussed about vertical mobility, upward mobility, and the downward mobility. Then we discussed about various factors, right, which are responsible for mobility, like factors like mm, demographic factors, right? Demographic factors plays an important role. Demographic factors like economic facters, like income, like age, status, all these are the demographic factors. The abilities of a parent and the children, they plays an important role in social mobility, right? If we discussed that abilities of parent and children, that is, it has been described as a by the Sorokin as that is through contest mobility, right? If one is capable enough, then they can contest and move in upward direction, right? Then the faulty distribution of individual in social position, right? And then the change in the environment, we discussed about the change in the environment, like legal environment, that there is a change in the legal environment, right? When there is a change in the legal environment, it provides an opportunity to everyone, because legally every individual is equal and should have equal opportunities to move upward, right? Then we discussed about the elite theory. Elite theory has been given by the Pareto, right? According to this theory, elite theories, according to these theories, that over a generation over a time, the generation loses its innate qualities, and this gives an opportunity of a lower class stratum or a lower class it gives an opportunity to the capable people of a lower class to replace those elite class and take their positions, right. So we discussed about the elite theories, then we discussed about the change in the social environment, right. Change in the social environment, like there are the changes in the environment like economic changes, social changes, technological changes, political changes, legal changes. They have affected the social mobility, right. Then industrialization played an important role in the mobility, right. How it has played an important role, change in the number of available vacancies because of the industrialization, and job opportunities has been increased, and this has, in this way they has given an opportunities. Industrialization has created an opportunity for those to move upward if they are capable enough, for to school or to get a job if they are capable enough, right. Then the different rates in the fertility, as we discussed, as the Sorokin said that those who are at the higher level in the hierarchy, they are less fertile, or they produces less rather than those at the lower. Change in the rank according to the occupations, right. And now according to the occupation, the rank has been changed, right, because certain status has been associated with the occupation, and when someone opts for that occupation, then the rank of an individual changes. Suppose someone from the lower strata becomes a doctor, then the rank changes, that rank of an individual changes now. Rather than considering people start considering him as a, now people have started considering him as a doctor. Rank has been changed, so rank according to the occupation, right. Change in number of inheritable status position because of the industrialization, right. There is a change in number of inheritable status position. Now there are less inheritable status position, right. Now the opportunities are available for each and every, equal opportunities are available, and if one is capable enough, then one can avail that opportunity, that is contest mobility, right. Change in the legal restriction pertaining to the potential opportunity. Legally everyone has equal right and should have equal opportunities for each and everything. They can fight for their rights, right. So we discussed about all these things. We discussed about the rank and position. Then the convergence hypothesis. Convergence hypothesis is much debated hypothesis, right. And industrial society, right. According to this, industrial societies will be pluralistic society one day, and strata, and they would have a common pattern of stratification as well as common pattern of mobility, right. So mobility would be high demand of industrialization, right. We discussed all these things today. Now in our next class we'll discuss about cultural and social reproduction. That's all for today. Thank you very much. Namaskar.